So what up with them scales, huh? What's up with these scales of conviction? Is this a cool mechanic? What's up with this? So in this video, I'm going to talk about the scales of conviction and why I think it's just basically glorified voting. This is not a unique opinion to me. Some people have mentioned this. I have some other ideas as to why this is kind of silly. Alright, so the scales is definitely glorified voting, because if you look at the actual scales themselves, you have, in this case, there's two choices, and each person that isn't Serenoa has a token that they throw in there. So it's literally just straight up voting, and then it's up to the people holding the meeting to determine which side is which. So in this case, yellow is transport illegal salt, and red is travel to Hyzant. So it's up to Serenoa to convince people as to which way to vote. And the funny thing about this is, if this were just like truly about people's convictions, why would I be able to convince people to change their convictions? Isn't that counterintuitive to what a conviction is? Isn't a conviction something like your inherent feeling or thoughts on something? So the fact that I can just go up to them and be like, hey, no, dude, I know you want to do this really badly, but let's just do this other thing that you don't want to do at all. This is the other thing that you actually hate because I want to do it, and then we'll be all set. So like, you essentially act as a lobbyist. So this in a funny way, this is kind of accurate to how U.S. government is in some ways, where you have like interest groups that lobby politicians to sway their vote. So in this case, you are the lobbyist, and you have to choose, or you have to like select the right options to convince people to vote for the thing that you want. So the whole idea of scales of conviction to me is kind of hilarious. Like, I think it's fine to split the story apart and to have different branches. Like, in this way, it's fine. But the method in which you do it is hilarious, because you just straight up go up to people and be like, hey, this opinion you have sucks. Can you change it? And they're just like, well, this one should listen to reason. We should do this. Why should we do this? Oh, well, this is why. Let's do this. Oh, okay. And then it'll tell you if they're basically swayed or not. It'll be like, they're deep in thought, or they're indifferent to your plea. Yeah, so she's more likely to go along with us. I actually need to convince them of the opposite thing, because I've already done chapter guides for that route. But I actually need to convince them for the other thing, so I have to go lobby my team. Honestly, you might as well just give Serenoa the power to make these decisions, because isn't he like the leader of this group? So I just don't understand. Like, it's basically like a more complicated way of having you make a decision, instead of you as the leader taking in other people's opinions and insights, like your other, second in commands and third in commands, whatever, and seeing what they want to do, and then factoring that into your decision as the leader. You have to like lobby them as if they're in control, because they have pseudo majority, even though most of them are just like random people. Like, Huette is literally a Kingsguard. Why would we consider her opinion as to what we want to do as an army? And Gila is a healer. Frederica has like no place on the battlefield. Is like, she's literally just like someone who can cast magic. Benedict is one of the few people who would actually make sense to take his input. Anna is a spy that gathers intelligence. Eridor is a battle-hardened warrior who's fought in a bunch of wars. Roland, he's a prince who doesn't have that much experience, so I would take his input with a grain of salt. But the three over here, their input actually makes sense. I guess Huette's kind of makes sense because she's a soldier. But these two are pretty sus for like how we should be deciding things, like militarily. Like, Benedict is probably the most reasonable person, and if there are more people like him, I would say the system makes sense. But all opinions are not equal in this case, because everyone has different levels of experience. And just because everyone has an opinion as to what the army should do, doesn't mean that that's what the army should do. You should do what makes the most logical sense and what will give you the best outcome. And a lot of people get mad at Benedict because they think that he's like too cold and calculated. But in reality, he's just smart. He's just not an idiot. Like, a lot of the times when he makes decisions people don't like, it's because he's making the right decision with the current information he has. So I think he kind of gets like a bad rap. Like, people kind of look at him as like this evil dude, but in reality he's just smart. And oftentimes smart people are misunderstood, or they're taken as like cold and calculated. All right, and then some other criticisms of the scales. The scales are presented as this magical thing but in reality, people just drop tokens onto the scales. It abstractly displays this in a fantastic way, but doesn't actually do anything that couldn't be done by tallying votes. So essentially, you just have like a voting machine, you know, the scales of conviction, that's presented as magical, but in reality, it's just a bunch of dudes dropping tokens on a scale, and then as soon as you're done dropping tokens, it like lights up and is like really overly dramatic with its thing. I mean, it's fine. Like, as a system, it's fine. It's just kind of funny because you're basically lobbying people. So, it would be one thing if you had to convince people through your actions. I think that would be interesting. Because, like, instead of just being like, hey, you have the wrong opinion, you would have to actually act in alignment with your own scales. And in which case, like, if the scales were more abstract and they, like, drew from the actions of your team and you as the player, and then it spit out a result, that would be interesting. And then you'd actually have to act in accordance with the scales. If the scales could kind of like read the souls and hearts of men or something, that would be like a more interesting concept. But as it stands now, it's just kind of like a voting machine, which is fine for the sake of gameplay and simplicity. It's like, how do we lobby these people to switch their votes? But I just thought it was funny. And every time I come to one of these things, it's just always funny to me. Because it's just like the scales of conviction. It's like, isn't it just voting though? And yeah, and it's just also weird how we're like factoring in all these random opinions, like from the army healer. So like for this example, so should we transport the salt to someplace or should we report it? This would be something that like Benedict and Serenoa should discuss, and maybe Eridor because he knows the factions involved, and I guess Gila could be factored in because she's from Hyzanth, so that would make sense. But yeah, that's it for this video. If you like this, definitely like and subscribe. I'm going to be doing some more videos like this where I just like talk about things, but I'm also still going to be doing like the tutorials and stuff like that. But yeah, thanks for checking this out, and I'll see you in the next video.